Alright guys, I suggest that you download the notes and kind of follow along and fill in as we go. Maybe watch it on your phone and fill it in on your iPad. That way you have the same experience that you would have in class. I will tell you every once in a while to pause and try something on your own. I strongly suggest you do that because it'll just check to make sure that you're understanding just like I do every day in class. Alright, so we're going to explore with this first one, but then we're going to come up with formulas that we'll use on the next page. So, what we're looking at is the relationship between the perimeters, the areas, and their ratios. So the first thing I want to find for each of these pictures, this goes back to chapter 1, is can we find the perimeter of each rectangle, can we find the area of each rectangle. You won't have to do these for the problems, we're going to be creating shortcut formulas in a moment. So the perimeter for a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So that's going to be 20 plus 12, which gives me a perimeter of 32 for that first rectangle. Its area is going to be 10 by 6, which is 60. And then for the second rectangle, the perimeter would be 2 times the length, 15, plus 2 times the width, 9. You get 30 plus 18, which is 48. And then its area is 15 times 9, which is 135. So now what we're looking at is 3 different ratios that we're going to work on throughout this section. So the first one's the scale factor. Remember, scale factor is just a ratio of any 2 sides of the 2 figures. So I'm going to do the 10 with the 15. You could also do the 6 with the 9. You'll get the same results. So if I do 10 with 15, remember we always want to reduce our ratios. Divide by 5, divide by 5. We get 2/3. So the ratio of the scale factor is 2/3. To find the ratio of the perimeters, we're going to do the same thing with just their perimeter number. So the 32 and the 48 are the 2 perimeters. We can reduce those both by 8, which is 4 over 6, and reduce by 2. We get 2/3. Look at that, same. And then I want to look at the ratio of the area. So that'd be 60 over 135. So I know for sure I can divide those both by 5. That's going to be 12 over 27, and then I can divide those both by 3, and we get 4 over 9. We do not get the same ratio. So it's now looking at what the relationship is between those. The scale factor and the ratio of the perimeters are the same, but what is the ratio? What is the relationship between that 2/3 to 4 9? So if you look real carefully, both the top number and the bottom number get squared to get to that. So the ratio of the areas, we have to square the numbers. So that's going to be important for the formulas for today. So here we're going to fill in the formulas. So the scale factor, I'm just going to use letters. If the scale factor is A to B, we realize that the ratio of the perimeter stays the same, and the ratio of the areas, they end up being the squared versions of those 2 numbers. So we get A squared and B squared. What you can do to remember this is think of what happens to the units. So when we do perimeter, the units end up staying the same, but when we do area, the units end up squaring. So that's how I remember which one's squared and which one's not squared. Alright, so looking at the first examples here, they want us to find the ratio of the perimeters and ratio of the areas, and they're giving us the 2 figures. So by giving us the 2 figures, it allows us to find the scale factor. So we're going to find that first. That's just side over side, and it does say in the directions to go first figure to second figure. So if I reduce that, I get 4/3, and then I need to think about with the ratio of the perimeters, the units would stay the same, so the ratio stays the same, so it's 4/3. But for the ratio of the areas, the units do not stay the same. We would end up squaring the units, so we have to square both numbers to get the ratio. So that's going to be 16 over 9. Alright, let's take a look at number 2, scale factor. Scale factor is what you can find just looking at the picture, side over side. Those, we both can divide both of those by 7, so we get 2/3. And again, the ratio of the perimeter stays the same because the units don't change, but the ratio of the areas, we have to do 2 squared over 3 squared, and we get 4 over 9. So this next one, number 3, take a minute, pause the video, try it on your own, see if you can get the same answer as me. I'm going to do the problem in 3, 2, 1. The scale factor is 15 over 25. We can divide those both by 5, so that's 3 over 5. The ratio of the perimeter stays the same, but the ratio of the areas, we have to square both of those. So it's 3 squared over 5 squared, which is 9 over 25. Alright, let's look at something that gets a little bit more challenging. 1, 3, 2, 1. Alright, on this next page, the problem is they're asking you to find something that's missing. Right now we have the two figures, so we know what their scale factor is, but we have one of their areas and we're trying to find the other area. So right now we can still find the scale factor just like we did before. Make sure you're thinking about what you're finding as you're doing each of these. This is 3 over 6, which reduces to 1/2. But I want to find an area. So if I want to find an area, I can't stick with a scale factor to find an area. I have to find the area ratio. So the first thing we have to do is what we did on the last page, is change this to an area ratio, which means we need to square both of those. 1 squared is 1, and 2 squared is 4. Then we can use that ratio and the area they gave us to find the missing area. In order to find a missing amount, we're going to have to use a proportion, like in chapter 7. So we're going to do 1 over 4 is equal to, we've got that 6 that we have to plug in, but you have to pay attention to where you're going to put the 6. It says that that's for the smaller parallelogram. So when you look at your ratio, looking at the two numbers, the smaller number of the two is 1, and that 6 has to go across from the smaller number since it says it's a smaller parallelogram. And x would go on the bottom to find the larger parallelogram. So then we multiply, we get x is equal to 24, and then this is an area, so it's going to be 24 inches squared. So this is the point that I would pause the video and go ahead and try number 5 on your own. I'm going to start it in 3, 2, 1. So with what they've given me, I can figure out the scale factor. So based on what we have the two sides. The two sides help me find the scale factor, so that's 12 over 18. Divide that by 3. Divide by 3. Oh, I could have picked 6. Oh well. We get 4 over 6 divided by 2. We get 2/3. And then I can't use that 2/3. Make sure you stop and think. It has an area. I have to use an area ratio. So the area ratio, I have to take that ratio and square it, just like I would to the units. We get 4/9. So that's what I can start my proportion with. And now they gave me the area of the larger trapezoid for this one. So that 121 has to go across from the larger number. So between 4 and 9, the larger number is 121. There's 9. So the 121 goes across from the 9. And then x goes here. We get 9x is equal to 484. And when you divide on your calculator, you get a decimal. You get 53.7 repeating. It says round to the nearest whole number in the direction, so we're just going to round that up to 54 meters squared. Okay? Let's try another type of problem. These problems, you have to be extra careful with what they're giving you and what you're trying to find in relation to how the real world works. You have to think about whether it's an area or perimeter that they're asking you for, so you're using the correct ratio. So they told us that we have the scale factor of two similar wood floors, which is 4 by 3. So we know the scale factor is 4 over 3. But we want to find if it costs $216 to finish the smaller wood floor. At that rate, how much would it cost to refinish the larger wood floor? So we don't know specifics here. We just know how much the smaller one is. But what we need to think about is when we're refinishing a floor and we're putting down all this wood here on the floor, are we talking about area or perimeter? Hopefully you realize that since that's all going to go inside of the rectangle, that is going to be area. So we can't use the scale factor. That doesn't help us find area. We need the area ratio to help us find area. So we have to take the scale factor and turn it into an area ratio, which means we've got to square both numbers. We get 16 over 9. And then we're going to set up again a proportion to find the missing number. So this time, again, they told us that it's the smaller wood floor that's 216, so this has to go across from the 9 because it's the smaller number. And we're trying to find x here. We get 9x is equal to 3,456. And divide by 9. And you get x is equal to 384, and that's in dollars is what we were trying to find. It's how much money that's going to cost. Okay, so this is where, again, I would pause it, try this next one on your own, and then see if you can come up with the answer. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. So this one, it might help to draw something out here if what I'm about to set up doesn't make sense. So I'm going to draw out. We know that this one has a length and this one has a width. That's the placemat, the smaller one. And the bigger one has 4 times the length and also 4 times the width. So if I wanted to figure out what the ratios of these would be in terms of cost, again, to make these, we're talking about making this whole thing and making this whole thing out of that fabric and embroidering it. So that's going to be area. So I know, again, I need to work with area. But what you need to realize they're giving you by giving you the 4 times part is that's actually giving you the scale factor. If I set that up with the picture I drew, I could do L over 4L, and the L's would cancel. We get 1 over 4 as a scale factor. So I need to take that scale factor and change it to area. So the area ratio is going to be 1 squared over 4 squared, which is 1/16. And just to think about why it is 1/16 and not 1/4 is both of these get multiplied by 4, both the length and the width, so it's 16 times bigger than the placemat. So then we want to put that $3.95 in the correct position. That's for the placemat, which is smaller, so $3.95 go there. X goes here. We cross multiply and solve, and you should get $63.20. Alright, just one more type of example, and these next ones are going to work backwards of what we've been doing. So in these next examples, they are giving you the ratio of their areas. So you have to realize here they're giving you areas. We're trying to work backwards to scale factor and ratio of the perimeters. So the area ratio, I'm just going to set it up as a fraction. But what we have to remember is when they give us the area ratio, this is a squared and this is b squared. To get to scale factor and also ratio of perimeters, we need to know what a over b is. So we need to think about what we need to do those 2 numbers to go backwards. To go backwards with those numbers, we're going to have to take the square root. So we need to take the square root of both of those numbers to take them back down to what they would be before we squared them. Square root of 25 is 5, square root of 49 is 7. That is the scale factor. And it's also the ratio of the perimeters, because remember, those are the same because they would have the same units. We wouldn't square either of those. So when they're giving you the squared ones, to unsquare it, you have to take the square root. The rest of these just get a little bit more challenging, and you have to be careful with your math. Is right now, if I were to take the square root of these numbers, it's not going to be very fun, so you need to make sure you simplify first. If you simplify first, you're going to notice once we simplify these, we can divide them both by 3, it's going to look a lot nicer. So if I divide by 3, I get 25 over 4, and now I know this is a squared and this is b squared, so I need to take those back down. I'm going to have to take the square root to go back to a and b. A over b is going to be 5 over 2. That is the scale factor and also the ratio of the perimeters. Alright. The last ones just have a little bit more algebra to them as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is write out the ratio. I know the ratio of these 2 equilateral triangles' area is 20 radical 3 over 45 radical 3. Now, it looks like it's more complicated because of the radical 3's. Don't let those confuse you. We can just cross them both out and make it a regular 20 over a regular 45. And just like the last one, reduce first before you try and get these broken down back to scale factor and ratio of perimeters. I divided them both by 5. I got 4 over 9. And then to get those to this is really a squared and b squared, because we're in area form right now. We need to take the square root to get regular a and regular b. So it's going to be 2 over 3 is a over b. So that's the scale factor and the ratio of the perimeters. So this is the last one. Pause it. Try it on your own. I'm going to do it in 3, 2, 1. So the ratio of their areas would be 2 pi over 200 pi. Same thing with the radical 3's, as you can cancel the pi's out. So if you didn't do that, cancel those out. We get 20 over 200, and then we can divide those both by 2. We get 1 over 100. And then to get, that's the ratio of the areas. That's the squared versions. I need to unsquare them. We have to take the square root. We get 1 over 10 is the scale factor, and 1 over 10 is also the ratio of the perimeters, because those will always be the same. Alright, so I need you guys to try the homework. Please try and get it done today. so that way you don't have to try and cram it in after your performance tomorrow night, because I really need you to be caught up with me come Wednesday, so that way we can focus on studying for your test, which is on Thursday. So please, please, please try and take today, catch up, even if you do it during study hall tomorrow if you have one, but take some time to watch this video and do the homework. Thanks, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.